Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Myth. So, today we're continuing series, the Unported Playlist, where I take a look at my favorite unported arcade games of all time, and today we are playing Mobile Suit Gundam Final Shooting. Now, this is a very hard game to talk about because it has everything I love about arcade games. It's a light gun game, it's got sprite scaling, it's in 2D, it's got everything, all the hallmarks of something I would love, and in certain areas I absolutely do think this game is totally a hidden gem, but in other areas, more specifically the length, it will absolutely drive you nuts and make you want to see the credits scroll faster than anything you've ever played before. Before you get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But on paper, everything Final Shooting does is awesome. It's got great light gun mechanics, it's got some fun stories, some fun visuals, and this runs on a rarer arcade board, the SSV, which is running an NEC VIC-60 CPU. This is a board that was made in conjunction by a few people, and Sammy was involved with it. Usually when you hear the name Sammy on my channel, it's a little bit janky. Now, as far as the gameplay of Final Shooting is concerned, it is very similar to Steel Gunner and Steel Gunner 2 from Namco. If you've ever played those games, you will 100% understand what's going on here in Mobile Suit Gundam Final Shooting. And the gameplay in and of itself is super competent and fun. But this game has one fundamental fatal flaw that takes it from being a hidden gem to something that I would say play only if you're a fan of the genre. This game takes absolutely forever to complete for an arcade game. It doubles back on itself, reuses assets, and basically makes you play levels all over again while basically changing absolutely nothing. It is the arcade equivalent to listening to an older parent try to tell a story and take 22 minutes to get to a point that could have been 60 seconds. This is the could have been an email, not a meeting of arcade games. If they trimmed this thing down to a tight 30 minutes, it would be something that everyone wanted to play and a lot more people would talk about, but unfortunately the developers at Banpresto just basically took the game's length and artificially elongated it as far as the material could possibly go without just completely ripping apart. And I am skipping over large swaths of each level. You'll see here we're finally done with chapter 1, but I went back and looked at the timestamp. It was almost 9 minutes from start to finish, and the graphics don't really change all that often. I do love all of these little in-between stage cut sequences, and they actually move relatively fast, getting you back into the gameplay. But right here, this level you're seeing, I've trimmed it down to maybe about 1.5 minutes. It's more like 7 minutes in real time, and it just does the same thing over and over again. Every single level is awesome for like 2 minutes, and then you want to be onto the boss fight, and the best arcade light gun experiences understand that and basically move you through the experience at a rapid pace, always showing you something new and making sure they change levels quick enough so you don't feel like you've been doing the same thing for way too long. And that is where Final Shooting 100% just falls on its face. Its length and its ability to take a single stage and stretch it out into oblivion is notorious in arcade gaming circles. Pretty much everyone who's ever played this game before will tell you the same thing. It is incredibly long. And that's unfortunate because the gameplay is a ton of fun, the music is awesome, the graphics are solid for the era. There's a lot to love here except for the length. Some games have a perfect length and need no changes. Other games could be trimmed down a little bit and you would bring a scalpel. If you wanted to edit down Final Shooting into a more concise experience, you would have a machete in your left hand and a chainsaw in your right, and you would be dual wielding, cutting content out of this game. And that's just the thing, the pacing is way off. Whether you're playing an arcade game, a console game, or a handheld game, the pacing needs to be appropriate for the material and the genre that you're working in. And that's where the developers basically just got completely confused when it came to Final Shooting. They had a fun formula, they had good graphics, they had spectacular soundtrack and fun sound effects, but they just couldn't seem to move the game by quick enough. I don't know if this was intended to become a console release because it does have that length that you would think would be ported to a home console, but this never was. And that is just a bummer because you can tell right here that there is a lot of promise in this game, but just looking at the sprite here, nothing is even happening. We have to wait for the screen to drop down a little bit, and then it launches a rocket out. You have 60 seconds to shoot this thing. Most of the shots seem to register, but it just takes forever to actually shoot it out of the air. I'm going to succeed with just 2 seconds here. But I shouldn't say so many bad things about this game. It can be fun in bursts, and I absolutely love the soundtrack. Go ahead and listen for 45 seconds, and I'll be right back. I mean, that's a fun song, but don't get me wrong, tonally it doesn't really make much sense because you are basically waging an interstellar war here against your opponent, and the sound sounds like something that you would hear out of a 70s sitcom, maybe a Sanford & Son adjacent show like that, and that is just kind of funny, but the music is great. I give it 10 out of 10 marks for being very good, and I'll probably give you one more sound sample of one of my favorite tracks in the game, maybe in about 3 or 4 minutes. But again, this is just such a hard game to talk about because, like I said, I want to say so many good things about Final Shooting. I love the gameplay mechanics, I love the sprite scaling, I love the art, I love the music. This is a good game. It's just not a good game, but near to an hour long. And the other thing is that they really just stretch the graphics as far as humanly possible. If it was an hour long, but every 3 minutes you were at a completely different stage and the shooting held up, it would be a lot more fun experience. Even here, just getting to the water, you're like 20 to 30 seconds of doing absolutely nothing before you're given the controls back. And while I have cut this down, this sequence here takes about 3 minutes just to move into the next level. And like I said, don't know if this was to just try to get quarters off players, to try to make it last as long as possible, thinking people would sit there and play the entire thing. I assume it would have done the exact opposite. People would have just decided their money was better spent elsewhere and they would have moved on. And that is why in arcade games, pacing is one of the most important things. If you're not talking about something like a fighting game, you need to be action-packed, you need to be quick, you need to be in and out in like 20 to 45 minutes tops, and you need to be delivering action the entire time. Final Shooting just does not realize that. Sure, they keep throwing wave after wave of enemy at you, but you don't change enemies all that often, and you have to scroll on this screen for 4 minutes until you get to the boss, and you'll see if you watch the long play when I upload this thing just how incredibly long it takes. So this is really more of a masterclass in potential. Final Shooting could have been one of those games that's like a B+ to A- tier light gun game from the 90s. If you play Steel Gunner or Steel Gunner 2, I absolutely love those games, and they're done in like 22 minutes. By the time you feel like you've seen enough, the credits are already scrolling, you had a good experience, and that was that. Even here, after taking a few deaths, I would say I didn't use that many credits for the game. It's not the hardest thing in the world, and it's quite generous with its life bar, but it just takes a long time to finish. And something like this gigantic epic space battle, this would be so good if you were playing it at like minute 15 or minute 16, but you're not getting into it until a half an hour later. And I love this. You have all of those different asteroids scrolling towards the screen, you have all the missiles coming at you, all these different Gundam in the background, all the ships fighting this war, and these explosions in the back. Just give me more of this and give it to me earlier, and I'm gonna love the game all that much more. Because this thing, like I said, again and again and again, had so much potential to be such an incredible experience, but I don't know who in the development design process decided this was the length they were going to use. Because we're now going to move inside, and I will give you a sample of the soundtrack indoors because I love the soundtrack piece in here. But just even trying to get into this scroll screen here, we're just sitting and waiting, and more enemies pop up. It's like they can't even manage to end a level correctly. They just need to keep giving you a little bit more to see and do before they move inside. And in this corridor right here, you're going to see all of these different numbered doors. They start at 9, and as we move through the area, you're going to have to go all the way from 9 to 0, doing the exact same thing 9 different times. But I will say I love this piece of music, so go ahead and give it a quick listen, and I will be right back. If there's one thing I can say about Final Shooting is the music is rock solid, but you'll see here the color did change. We went from door 9 to door 0, we went above ground, then we came back into the ship and had to go from door 0 to door 9, doing the exact same thing all over again, and all they did was just change the color. This is such a bummer game. I love the gameplay, I love the graphical style, I love the music, but God, could they just not be concise with this experience. It's like watching a 3-hour movie that should have been a 2-hour movie, but the director and editor couldn't bring themselves to cut anything because they loved it so much. So I'm not sure if the developers are looking for more quarters, or they just fell in love with their work so much they thought that you needed to have more of it. But definitely check Final Shooting out. Just be aware that it's going to take you about an hour, and at about minute 25 you might be thinking you could find a different use use for your day. This is a hidden gem for 20 minutes and a slog for 40. Short of that, leave me a comment down below and tell me if you've seen it, but we are done, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.